From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lead. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on October 27th, 2023 from South Carolina Public Radio studios here in Columbia. This episode is dedicated to local elections. That's right, folks, we're putting the 2024 presidential race on hold just for a second because guess what? There are municipal candidates across the state that will be on the November 7th ballot who will make decisions affecting you and your neighbors. South Carolina Public Radio's Scott Morgan has a deep dive on local elections and turnout issues as seen through the races in Greenville this year. We bring you Scott's report and then catch up with our man in Rock Hill, Scott Morgan himself. So stay tuned. Also, intern Grace graces us with her presence in the wind down. We learn the latest from Gen Z. And the Lead also loves hearing from you guys. That's why we have a voicemail box set up at 803-563-7169. Let us know what you're doing, how your spooky season's going, what you're up to, hot takes, anything you want to know. 803-563-7169. Also, be aware, we got a little treat for you this weekend in the Lead feed, so check it out. Listen with your family. They're going to love it.
Local elections? Yawn.
I would imagine that like a serious and spirited conversation between serious zoning board candidates in an area where these issues matter could get kind of dry and technical. The details matter a lot, but the details are the eat your vegetables part of the world.
Nobody turns out for off-year, local-only, no celebrity elections. Municipal, zoning board, watershed commission, even the names are boring. Without the flame of national spotlights or emotional issues driving us in anger to the polls, we don't go to the polls. In the world's most shimmering example of collective democracy, 80% of us who could do something could not care less. And yet,
local government is the most effective.
The local election affects them much more on a day-to-day basis than a state or federal election does.
We have 7 congressmen in the state of South Carolina. If all 7 congressmen did exactly what I wanted them to do, what difference is it going to make? But I can go find my county council member. I can go talk to my school board. I can go knock on the door. I can go set up a meeting and meet them for coffee. I can actually make a difference.
You know, I can vouch that in 22 years as a reporter, I've never met a president. Come to think of it, I've never met a senator either. I have met 2 House reps in person and spoken to another on the phone. And governors, 3. 4, if you count one who used to be. But Bill used to come in from his tractor to talk to me. Buddy used to like to swear to me because he knew I wouldn't print it. Evan told me how glad he was to have actually lost a re-election bid because he knew I wouldn't print that either. These were all mayors whose cell phone numbers I had, and that was just at my first newspaper job. My own mayor at the time did the wedding of my ex-wife's sister because he was a friend of the family's. Point being, local elections are made of local people. Your neighbors, people you know from church, people whose cell phone numbers you have. If you text LOLs with AOC, you're one up on 330-some million people in this country, give or take. So, in this off-year, no celebrities voting cycle, we're going to hear the case for why you really ought to care about local elections in a non-presidential year, without platforms and without too much politics, filtered mainly through one of the few partisan local elections in South Carolina, the Greenville City Council.
You just never know. But, honestly, I'm an old political hack, and going door to door is one of my favorite things because you know why? It's how you really get to know what's going on in the city, and you really get to know what's on people's minds. It's completely different.
It's a perfect October Sunday in town, and the Dems are going canvassing.
So when you do get to talk to someone, it can be powerful. It's what I love about politics.
Michelle Shane is the party's candidate for mayor. She's the first challenger in a general election to Republican Knox White in quite some years.
We know we've got a Gamecock fan here.
Yeah. We're in a pretty reliably Democratic neighborhood. The voters that Shane and other members of the Greenville County Democratic Party are visiting are unlikely to vote for another party. So these visits aren't an attempt so much to drum up new support. They're more of a reminder to actually go out and vote local this November. Our first stop where anyone is actually home belongs to Peggy Sanders, who says she always votes, and with good reason.
Because my grandmama told us to. She always have voted. I don't care what election it was in, she voted. And she taught us to do the same thing, so I do the same as she does.
Her grandmother could have actually passed that perspective on to a lot of people in this neighborhood. Door after door, voter after voter here say pretty much the same thing, that they always vote because they were taught to value elections at every level. No one, however, quite put it like Sarah Reese.
We fought so long to have the right to do it. I cannot imagine anybody staying at home and not going to vote. I cannot believe it.
Consider that an actual celebrity endorsement. Reese is a retired singer from the New York Metropolitan Opera, now living in Greenville.
I'm like, what is your problem? What is wrong with you? And then I have to stand there with my loud self and tell them why they should be out there voting. I can't believe anybody would not vote. I have my sticker over there on the mirror, because when I pass by it to go upstairs to my bed, I am so proud that I had the opportunity to make a difference. It makes a difference. People don't understand. It makes a difference. What does not make a difference is if you stay at home, lay in your bed, and then turn on the TV and complain about who won.
I mean, no one's perfect, of course, but I thought he did some.
Just when it seems like the Democratic contingent has only been preaching to the proverbial choir all this time, we turn a literal and figurative corner.
Michael Harris.
I've been asking every person who talked to me the same question. Do you normally vote in municipal elections? Harris answered differently from all of them.
I don't normally vote.
Why not?
I don't know. Don't have an opinion so much.
But his answer gave me a chance to ask something I haven't had the chance to so far. Do you think meeting some candidates might change your mind?
Oh, it already has.
Oh.
It already has.
He's so sweet.
Great. I'm honest. Honestly sweet. Nice to meet you.
And the reason Harris says this visit has changed his mind is because it's the first of its kind that he's ever had. And that touches on something very vital about local campaigns. Something Michelle Shane mentioned back at the party's offices before we took to the streets today.
People are tired of not being heard. Their voices don't matter, and they're giving up hope. And I think the Democrats, in going door to door, we're not just saying, here's what we can do, here's the promise. It's what is concerning you. It's a dialogue.
Call it voter disengagement, loss of hope, or straight-up apathy, but voters not turning out in non-federal elections is a real thing. In 2021, 13.2% of all voters who could have voted in Greenville County showed up to do so. Encouragingly for Democrats, in wards with contested races, turnout was as much as twice as high as that, and the party made a solid showing, winning several contests. Discouragingly, twice 13.2% is still less than half what showed up for the presidential race a year earlier. So getting people to vote local takes work on the front porch level. And there actually is some scientific footing for this talking point. All the way back in 1999, the National Institutes of Health published findings that going door to door and canvassing for political campaigns is the best method for increasing voter turnout. For Democrats in particular, this strategy of interacting at the household level had its biggest success in the form of a certain Illinois senator who aimed a little higher a few years ago.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And Democrats trying to beef up voter representation have relied on this approach since, and will continue to do so. Ditto for their counterparts.
We've been telling our precinct people, leadership in the precincts, go out and door knock and just tell them who their school board member is.
Jeff Davis is one of 3 members of the Greenville County GOP that I sit down with a few days after going canvassing with the Democrats. Knox White, Michelle Shane's opponent and the incumbent in the mayor's race, declined to meet with me.
Tell them who their county council member is, who their house rep is. Just the very basics. You have to start off from ground zero because most people don't know what's going on.
But Davis, the county party's representative to the state GOP, brings up a point that more voters do seem to be coming around to realize. That local elections are about a lot of things. Mayor and city council, sure, but also things like school board, clerks, Department of Public Works commissioner. Some of these are nonpartisan positions. Some of them are not nonpartisan positions. And to say that Davis takes local elections seriously would be an understatement.
We're really into it for the long term about how we can actually get people involved. And it is a heavy lift. But if we all do this together, if we're doing it here locally, we're doing it in other counties, other states, that's what's going to help save America and save South Carolina.
Did you catch that? That tying of national mood to local races? Well, to understand why local elections are so important, you do need to understand how they're driven by, and in turn drive, national politics.
D.C. is a distraction, but it's also, confrontation is difficult for humans. Most of us do not want to have confrontation. It's easy to watch the confrontation going on in D.C., but it's a lot harder to watch the confrontation that goes on at county council or at your school board. It's hard to see your neighbors or people you're going to run into at the grocery store actually doing things that you might not agree with. It's okay to say, oh, such congressman or senator from some other state is doing some crazy things and I don't really like that and I can't stand them. It's harder to do that when it's your neighbor. And that's why I think people try to push away from local politics. And what we're trying to do is educate people to that and get them more involved where they can actually make a difference. A lot of people want to do something. They want to make a difference. They want to make a better world. But it starts with your own precinct. It starts with your county, your state, and then eventually it'll funnel up to the country as a whole.
Joe Dill is a former Greenville County councilman and vice chair of the county Republican Party. He sees a strong local Republican presence as the best way to influence Capitol Hill.
If we've got people that are conservatives, people that feel the way we feel in the neighborhoods, on all of these boards and commissions, everything else will take care of itself.
This is, of course, something Democrats also know. That party equally wants to influence neighbors to seek public office and in turn be able to influence state and federal lawmakers in ways that would benefit their platform. So there actually is a lot of commonality here. Both parties see themselves as good for Greenville and good for South Carolina, and both parties see local voting as key to getting somewhere. And they both want people to understand how local elections ripple outward.
I think when it comes to volunteering for boards and commissions, a lot of people don't know how.
State House Representative Chandra Dillard represents District 23 in Greenville County. She's part of the Democrats' door-to-door campaign for Michelle Shane.
And then they ask themselves, do I have any skills or talents that would lend themselves to serving on a board or a commission? So it's really making that accessible to people, educating them that we need the citizens to participate in their government.
Translation, local elections have consequences beyond the seat being voted for. Joe Dill.
You got the city that appoints boards and commissions. You got county council that appoints boards and commissions. And they pick people that are their friends and that feel the same way they do. So if you got a bad person on the county council or the city council, that person's going to influence others to put people on there like them. So you got to change the local government to be what you want it to be.
Well, the other thing, too, is trying to educate neighbors, because a big focus for us is you can't change unless you change primaries.
Yvonne Julian is the chair of the Greenville County Republican Party.
So that's the other thing for us, is you got to change the turnout in primary elections. I mean, for the last local election here, it's pitiful,
That was 2022. And in Greenville County, the turnout was 14.4%. And that was with a governor's race and a U.S. Senate seat on the ballot. So one could make the argument that 14% of the population is responsible for where things are politically. And one could equally make the argument that the 86% of people who stayed home are equally responsible for where things stand politically today. Whichever perspective you take, Jeff Davis says the county GOP is zeroing in on the word responsible.
It's not just about voting, it's about being a responsible voter. You have a responsibility. Nobody likes being told that, you need to go do something, but you have a responsibility to understand who these candidates are. I used to be this way too. I'd go in the day of, and whoever I saw the most signs out there, that's probably the person I would vote for, So, and that's not the way to pick your candidates. That's not the way to elect people. You have to spend some time up front to get to know who these people are, look at what their principles and their policies are that they're trying to do, what they want to accomplish, and that's who you need to go vote for. It's not who sends you the most mailers. We want you to think. We want people to think for themselves and get involved.
So why don't they? Why don't people get involved in local politics? Why don't they show up to vote? Dare one ask, why don't people care about local races?
Scott, I don't think it's too fair to say that people don't care.
Okay.
The American people care, they're interested, they know that government's important, and certainly over the last 10 or 12 years, maybe a little bit more, participation in voting in general has been tracking up. People definitely care. I think there are things about American elections sort of in general, and maybe the way that boils down to local elections in particular, that pose some disincentives and barriers that probably aren't intentional.
So this is Richard Almeida. He's a political science professor at Francis Marion University in Florence. While Democratic and Republican candidates and party members struggle with the heft of trying to convince voters to do their homework, Almeida can help explain what keeps people home in the first place. And ironically, democracy does.
We have a lot of elections. The United States is built as a federal system. And so, we have a national government with a president, a House of Representatives with 435 seats, a Senate with 100 seats. We've got 50 state governors, and I've never done a count, but I would imagine there are hundreds or maybe a few thousand state legislators, and then county government, municipal government, special governments or what have you. We are a big country that was designed with a decentralized government, and that creates a lot of elected officials.
And that, in turn, creates a lot of elections that happen multiple times a year, and that can be really hard to keep track of. You know what else keeps people home? Us.
How do I know if somebody is a good choice for a zoning board? That's information that can be had, but that's information that might not be easily or readily had. There's plenty of coverage of national news and state-level news, right? There's much, much less local news. So, has the city council really been doing a good job? That is important information, and voters need that information. There is a very real need for local government coverage. That's stuff that is legitimately beneficial to folks, that would help them operate in an environment where, the information that they want and need is not always easy to get.
So where this leaves a lot of voters is following party cues, which can have its drawbacks, but is it always a bad thing? Well, not to hear Chandra Dillard tell it.
Research has shown that when there are party affiliations, usually turnout is heavier than it would be for nonpartisan elections. Just like we're walking now trying to educate voters, it is even more difficult to do it in a nonpartisan fashion. But I will say this, just because we have party affiliations here in Greenville on a municipal level, our voters are very sophisticated, and sometimes they just vote their conscience, right? They don't vote party lines all the time. And so I think that is what makes Greenville unique. But I certainly believe that, and the evidence has shown that partisan elections help with the voter turnout.
Municipal Election Day in South Carolina this year is Tuesday, November 7th. Early voting runs from October 23rd till November 3rd. Don't say you didn't know.
Scott, welcome back, and thank you for that thorough report.
Good to be here.
So, local politics matter. We know that. You and me, AT even knows that. City council, county council, mayor, school board, state reps, state senators. That's where things happen. Politics that directly affect people, from taxes to speed bumps and more. So, why, Scott? Why is it so hard? Surmise your report there. Why is it so hard to get people motivated for these elections?
Well, I think there's a lot of cliches that happen. There's this sort of narrative of like Republicans are crazy and Dems are lazy, and which is all bull, of course. But I think a lot of people sort of rely on these cliches that there is this nobody cares about the local election. And I hope that it came across kind of cheeky, because that's kind of how I was trying to frame it. It's like, why does nobody care about local elections? Well, people do care about local elections. The problem is, in a lot of ways, they don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
You heard Dr. Almeida talking about how sometimes that actually is a function of the press. I can remember 20-odd years ago when I started as a newspaper reporter, we used to do a lot of very serious, in-depth, like, here's who your local candidates are.
Yeah.
And turnout, it was never 100%, obviously, but it still was better than like 12% than what you're getting. So people need information locally, but they don't know where to get it anymore. And I think Jeff Davis was the one who said out in Greenville, he brought up the point of we don't like conflict. We don't want to get involved in our neighbor's business so far that we are just watching, our neighbors fighting over each other. So people tend to stay away. I think there's a lot of truth behind all of that. I think that's still a bit not quite right. I think people just don't, it's not that they don't care. I don't think people really understand quite in their bones how important local is. I think it seems kind of small time because we're all distracted by the big shiny keys nationally.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's talking about the speaker race right now.
Yeah, and we're like, that doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It's what it is. And that's, I think, kind of going back to what you're saying, it is about more local news coverage, which has been a victim of everything. Like, so many things have changed these days. Jeff Davis was an interesting voice. You were talking about him. And D.C. being a distraction, it's being hard to see that confrontation on council, though there are some confrontational county councils and city councils.
Oh, sure.
And Lord knows school boards have plenty of issues.
Oh, sure.
But even me being someone that, follows this stuff, I guess I'm too busy keeping up with 124 state reps and 46 state senators and constitutional officers and a 9-member congressional delegation. So, that to me is like maybe my ceiling or like maybe my floor. I don't know. So when it gets to like even city and county council stuff here in Columbia, I'm like reaching out to people like, who are you voting for? Like trusted sources that are more plugged in.
Right.
Because when I was in Florence, I covered city and county council. I love that stuff because you got to see it. And then you had to write about it and try to make it interesting. And you're talking about, tax rates. And hopefully that gets people more motivated, when it really directly affects them. So, that's the premise of this podcast, too, is us trying to get more people to understand that they have state reps and state senators. Yeah. But it's also hard when it comes to that local level, unless you're really plugged in, you're really agitated, or you got a bone to pick with somebody.
Right. And I think the problem with localism in general is that it seems like it's such small potatoes to people. Mm-hmm. And we as a culture generally in society, in this state, in this whole country, are kind of like gold medal. We don't really like the meat and potatoes kind of stuff necessarily. And if you break it back down into the journalism coverage, it's the same thing. Like at the local paper, you could write great stories, but you win the local paper award and everybody's like, oh, isn't that cute? Mm-hmm. I look at it really sort of like Plankton, right? Mm-hmm. It's like nobody cares about Plankton. The only Plankton we know is the guy from SpongeBob, right?
Yeah,
so
evil.
Yeah, and he's a bad guy. But like people say, well, why should I care about Plankton? It's like, well, because Plankton is literally the lungs of the ocean. Right? If we lose plankton, we lose oxygen in the ocean, we lose biodiversity in the ocean, and then we start dying. Like the whole planet.
Tony Bartlemy with the Post and Courier would love to hear this from you because he did that whole takeout piece on that. Remember? And it was fascinating how everything's connected. Of course,
yeah, everything is. And so, like when we take these little pieces of local out of the whole picture, this is what starts affecting everything larger and larger. So, if you want to think about national and big time politics, you have to start with the plankton, which is the local politics. It is the water board. It is the mayor. It is the constable's office and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so if you really do want to make a change in something, or if you want to at least have your voice heard, it's like, this is where it is, man. Yeah. It's like, why does nobody want to listen to that?
Yeah, sheriffs, clerk of courts, mayors and city and county councils, of course, they all matter. And again, I think it's something like maybe people have to get more motivated just because, oh my gosh, my tax bill, my water bill, why is this like this? And then that's when people get fired up and then they realize that they haven't been paying attention and everything's kind of been going down the crapper. And then all of a sudden it's like, why haven't we been doing more? It's because no one cares.
Yeah.
There's apathy and nothing's happening. So there was some in your piece talking about people getting energized more at the local level, but maybe that's more folks running versus people actually starting to care more.
Well, maybe, and my opinion of it personally is that as long as it brings people out, I think it's probably a good thing. And, when you talk about trying to make this sort of, try to sexy up the issues that are not necessarily the sexy issues, to their credit, I do think the local political parties are trying to pay more attention to getting people out to do that. And as I said, you go back to this cliche of, Democrats being lazy or in disarray or whatever like that, where they can't really do anything. It's like, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I think it becomes this sort of narrative that seems to sound true because people keep saying it, but it's not. Out in Greenville, they're literally walking around knocking on doors like, hey, well, I know you're a voter. Go out and vote. And people are like, oh, yeah, right. I didn't realize there was an election. It's
Yeah. I think there's a lot of assumptions, too, that like, oh, I'm in a Republican district or Democratic district, I don't need to vote.
Right.
People think about that in the presidential election too, but it's still, you see that in the midterms. I mean, midterms are always a bit of a toss-up sometimes when it comes to some districts in our state, like the 1st Congressional District, but you still don't see the same turnout that you would see in a presidential election year when they're also up for elections. So a lot to deal with there. So Scott, final question. Are you going to become more of an engaged local voter as a result of this reporting, or were you already there?
I am already very much an engaged local voter. Matter of fact, the other day...
Who'd you vote for? Tell us already. You have to tell us.
Me. I voted for me. This is a true story. I walked into in Rock Hill. There was my ward councilman was running unopposed. And I thought, I don't like unopposed candidates, so I'm going to write myself in. To my terror, I was actually leading the race for about an hour and a half because I was the only person who voted. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to win this thing, And my friend was like, "What are you going to do if you win?" I'm like, "I'm going to have a talk with John."
Yeah.
Hey,
I thought about that too. I saw it's only $100 filing fee for the Senate race, and I was like, oh, I can't do that. I couldn't possibly do that.
I just wrote my name in, and I thought oh no, I might actually win this thing. I don't want to be a councilman. So
fear.
But I am actually very, very engaged. I always, matter of fact, on the back of my phone, I still have my I voted sticker.
Yeah.
So I'm very engaged, and I don't want to wag my finger at people. I don't think that really does any good to do that, obviously, but I do think that it would serve you very well as a citizen of any city or any municipality or any county or whatever, to know better who is calling the shots,
definitely
what is happening, the issues that are actually happening, because the president is not going to come and fix your street. The senator is not going to come fix your street. Your councilman could come and fix your street.
Yeah, especially when you call them over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And county transportation councils, too. So thank you, Scott, so much. We appreciate your reporting.
Of course.
Get out there and vote, folks. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news, and we're glad you're here because TGIF, today, Grace Intern Friday.
Today, Grace Intern Friday. Thank God it's Friday for Grace.
That's right, producer A.T. Shire.
Yes, we're trying to figure out the acronym.
This is our time to talk to a real-life member of Gen Z.
Oh, thank you, Grace. Welcome.
Grace.
Welcome,
Grace.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be back.
We still don't know your last name.
I don't want to know.
I don't either.
They don't have last names in this generation.
Oh, God.
That's what I've been reading.
Kids these days.
I've been reading on the internet.
Yeah,
Grace?
I saw.
Right, I actually don't have a last name.
My aunt on Facebook shared something about this recently.
So, yeah. My aunt was talking about this on Facebook. There's a meme.
Grace, every Friday we give you the microphone. You get to choose what we talk about. This is Gen Z News, okay? Okay, so what have you brought us?
I have brought more Taylor Swift Gen Z news.
Convenient, okay.
Only because she just released 1989 Taylor's version last night, so it's only appropriate that we talk about it.
Can we break down, for everyone older like me, what does any of this mean? Taylor's version. I understand that 1989 is an album she's already released.
Right.
Okay, so take it from there.
Okay, so 1989 was released in 2014, regular album. Right, that's just like the original album. And then blah, blah, yeah. And, that's like her, fifth album, I think. And prior to that album, and including that album, Scooter Braun bought all of the rights to her music.
Her back catalog.
Right, so she didn't own any of it. She wasn't making royalties on any of the streamings and all that stuff. So by re-recording and branding it Taylor's version, now she owns it and is getting all the royalties, and it's her music again. So really, she's getting all the money again from it, which I know you're going to say that anyway.
Because she's a billionaire. Yay!
I'm so happy.
We're happy for you, Taylor.
Yes, Taylor.
I live and breathe with how billionaires are doing, you know.
Me too.
Yes, but I will say I do agree with what she's done to Scooter Braun. I do think it's total BS. The way that back catalogs and the way that labels handle their artists' back catalogs, it is disgusting and it bothers me. So I will agree with her there, but also I'm disgusted by her wealth.
Also, blah, 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 whatever. If I had it, I'd take it.
Same.
I would not be here right now. Actually, it'd be a podcast about how I'm still normal even though I have billions of dollars. Guys, I haven't changed at all. But every time I eat avocados, they're made with
Then you
gold
get them at
flake.
Whole Foods instead of Walmart.
So today is the re-release of 1989, and this is a monumental day. Once just a blah blah normal album. Now.
So does
Taylor's
she change
version.
it, or is it like what
Okay.
what comes with that?
So what comes with it is additional tracks from the vault. That's what they're called.
Okay.
And that's what they say on it. It'll say like blah blah song from the vault, Taylor's version. It's like the longest title ever, but it's songs that were recorded and written for the album but didn't make the cut on the final version, the original version. So she adds them as, I think, like obviously an incentive to get people to listen to the Taylor's version.
In my mind, that just sounds like slop. That they're like, oh, they'll take anything. They'll love whatever here.
What are your favorite songs?
At one point, she said, "I don't think these are worthy of this album." At one point, she made that decision.
Yeah, but when you're Taylor Swift, you have to make some hard decisions, and that doesn't mean it's not a worthy song.
You're saying Taylor Swift C cuts better than other artists' A cuts.
I want to also add that she not only had just the 1989
Gavin
album,
looked this up. He doesn't.
Well,
know
I mean,
this.
I have some favorites from this album. I'm going to ask Grace
We'll
about
have
in a
to
moment.
discuss.
But there's 1989, then there's 1989 Deluxe Edition, which one of my favorite songs is on. And I look at this, and now we have the Taylor's version. That being said, Grace, what are your favorite songs from
let's break this down.
1989?
Okay.
There's no wrong answer. I want to put
There
that out
are
there.
no wrong
Unlike
answers.
AT, there's no wrong answer.
However, the answer that I'm about to say is the right answer.
Okay.
Clean. Best song on 1989 for sure.
What makes it so good? I've never heard this song in my life.
It's so good.
What makes it sound
It's so
The
good.
lyrics are really good and meaningful, and it's a good analogy of what she's talking about, how she's clean from the breakup and it's over. And
I think that when she breaks up with Travis, the inevitable breakup, she's going to write something about intercepting somebody's heart. You know,
I like New Romantics.
Good choice.
Because it's so hype.
It is.
And then also, I don't like Shake It Off. I mean, Shake It Off is fine.
Shake It Off's a bop.
They're so like built in. The
I know
Bad
that
Blood was
song.
good
I know
because
that
all the
song.
backstory. Blank Space, you probably might remember.
No.
That was a good one.
Blank
Amy
Space
says that's
is
her favorite.
one of the greatest Taylor Swift songs
Producer
ever.
Amy is giving thumbs up. She agrees with all of
We
this.
need to get Amy to talk so that she can back me up.
And then Wildest,
Gavin is
I also
backing
like,
you up.
I also like,
Yeah, that's true.
I also like Wildest Dreams too.
Also really good.
Great music videos. Those are also like really good music videos too. It's very Out of Africa. If you've never seen Out of Africa, then just stop listening to this podcast.
This is really an Out of Africa pod.
Meryl Streep, Robert Redford. I mean, my
Bobby
God.
Redford?
There's a reason it won the Oscar that year, folks.
Okay, I don't make
Look
this stuff
it
up.
Look it up.
So, what is this truly what all your friends are talking about? Everyone is talking about this Taylor's version. Was there any like crypto numerology that led you to decide that today it was going to come out?
Well, she announced it like months ago, but you know, Taylor Swift fans are crazy. And while
Yes.
I am a huge Taylor Swift fan, I'm not one of the crazies.
Okay, you're a good one.
I'm a good one, yeah.
Okay.
But all these crazies are thinking that she's going to drop a double album. I don't know if you guys have seen these theories.
1989
Like
part
a
2.
new album.
Like part 2, because but their reasoning is ridiculous. Like
Let's
one
get
of
into
the
it.
reasons is she's been talking about her affinity for Shania Twain and wearing a Shania Twain t-shirt.
yes.
And just
I'm here for
because
that.
Shania Twain, me too, love her. But
Lyme
just
disease.
because Shania Twain released a double album, now people are saying that, Taylor Swift is because she was wearing a Shania Twain t-shirt.
Do you think it'd be 98, 91 to 1989?
I don't know.
You know what I'm
I think
saying?
I
Your
think
numerology?
this is very stupid. But I mean, I love that. My first album
love
I ever
Shania.
bought was a double album.
Of Shania Twain.
It was not. It was Smashing Pumpkins. But
My first album was Ace of Base, The Sun.
you
on
probably
CD.
have never bought an album, right, Grace?
It was a CD.
Yeah, like a CD. I
But
remember
Taylor's doing all the albums.
I remember
now, too.
going to Best Buy with my dad. I said this on First Podcast and getting the
Because it
Fearless
wasn't-
CD.
Oh, if you had ever listened.
Yeah,
Because
you
it
guys
was your
obviously
podcast.
don't listen to me, but it's
Okay.
fine.
Well, because they like a lot of artists now are doing the albums, the vinyl albums. and
Vinyl
it's
is selling
I think it
more than
delayed,
anything
like,
else.
When Taylor did one of her recent albums, like it took so much vinyl and it took up all the capacity to produce vinyl in the world that like it took away from other albums that wanted to get pressed in
This
vinyl
is
too.
so messed up. I hate when they talk about like taking up all the vinyl in the world.
No,
Like,
vinyl
that's
like
crazy.
not like vinyl
I know
like
what
the
you mean.
material,
I know
but
what
like
you mean.
there's only
Yeah,
so
yeah,
many
yeah.
presses.
I understand. That's
but
too
when
much.
you got the money, honey.
I know.
When
I
you're
know.
a billionaire.
But see, then yeah,
I'm so happy for her.
it's like
Oh.
I got like I have like a Lady Gaga album, I have all these other albums. I'm like I get them, and like I don't want to turn the record.
I listen
over.
to 'em.
There's a whole reason why we have advanced to where
turning
we
it
don't
over.
have to get up.
Turning
we can
it
just
over is a pain.
Hit the button on our
Yeah.
phone, and we can skip to another song.
Yeah, I don't like to skip songs. I'm a real front to backer in life.
Wow!
Yeah.
That's
wow!
interesting.
I'm a big front to backer. I hate shuffle. Disgusting.
I'm totally the opposite. I live for
Grace,
shuffle.
I'm so glad we're in a safe space over here.
Me too. He stays over there behind the glass.
You mean? Oh wait, what you're talking about? Like on an album itself? Yeah. Okay, I see.
I'll play it straight through.
But
when I listen to an album for the first time, I will listen to it straight through. But if it's like an album that I have listened to a million times, like I'm just gonna pick and choose songs.
That being said, if I do listen to an album and it is on shuffle, I'm like, this is
that's
out of place.
wrong.
Like
Yeah.
it's supposed to be here. Like
I want
Adele's 25. Like
when one song ends,
that you have to listen to it order, though. No other choice.
When one song ends, I just have the strongest feeling like the next one needs to be there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so I mean.
The Beatles albums are the same, right?
I don't listen to the Beatles. The Beatles. I don't listen to Foot Tappers. Okay. If you can go like da 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 to the song, like I'm not interested. Okay. Anyway, I mean that's me arguing with other older people.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably what Grace feels like when she talks to me. But anyway, Grace, thank you for talking to us. Thanks for setting us straight, millennial or Gen Z.
Millennial.
I know. I can't.
She's come to the retirement home.
Yeah.
I'm kind of offended by that one.
Tell us what's going on out there, Grace.
That's how I feel. You and what is an e-cigarette? Anyway, Gavin, please hit the outro.
Yeah, let me hit her vape really quick.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Grace. TGIF and Be Like Grace. Leave us a message, some hot takes at 803-563-7169. You can also show us your appreciation by leaving us a message on Apple Podcasts. And stay up to date with the latest news on SCTV.org and SouthCarolinaPublicRadio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina. Oh, you can take your chicken salad and put it somewhere else.